Sure thing. Thanks, Annalyn, for that icebreaker and that wonderful joke. It's pure gold. My name is Annika McDonald. Thank you so much for joining us today. A few housekeeping items before we start. Today's call will be recorded and posted to our Clean Buildings webpage. We ask that during the webinar, you please remain muted. If you have any questions, please post them in the chat box. We will be monitoring the chat box and pause for discussion. This slide here represents our agency's purpose is to strengthen communities. Commerce touches every aspect of community and economic development. The Clean Buildings program sits within the Department of Commerce's State Energy Office, and our role is the administrator of the state Clean Buildings Law. The Clean Buildings Law is an energy performance standard for existing non-residential buildings. This is our Commerce Clean Buildings team. If anyone is interested in learning more about our program, our webpage is listed here on the 7th bullet and located within the Commerce website. If you have any questions, please email our Building Central inbox. This is our agenda for today's call. We will have the Department of Revenue present on who qualifies for the Early Adopter Incentive Program, who can claim the credit, and what taxes the credit can be applied to, how the credit can be carried forward and brought down, how and when the credit can be billed back to the taxpayer, and how the department intends to verify the credits claimed. We will also review the Early Adopter Incentive Guidebook input to date and discuss outreach and support resources. To date, we presented the draft Early Adopter Incentive Guidebook, and today we will discuss customer support and resources. Our next workshop on equity and inclusion has been rescheduled to April 28th, and we will finalize the guidebook in May for the program launch July 1st, 2021. The Clean Building Standard applies to existing non-residential buildings over 50,000 square feet of gross floor area. Some building types are exempt, such as industrial and agricultural uses. The law is based on ASHRAE Standard 100, and this is the reference standard for our program. Rules were finalized December 2020 and can be found under WAC 194-50. Commerce will notify building owners and launch the Early Adopter Incentive Program July 1st, 2021. And this graphic here represents the incentive application schedule by building size. Mandatory requirements begin by building size 1 year after the application period ends. This incentive program is available for all buildings covered by the Clean Buildings Law and includes multifamily buildings. However, multifamily buildings are not required to comply with the Clean Building Standard itself. To qualify, the building must be 15 EUI over the target for the building type. The building must be brought into full compliance with the Clean Building Standard and reduce their EUI at or below the target. The incentive is 85 cents per square foot of gross floor area, and we have $75 million available. The law requires that Commerce administer an incentive program for early adopters of the Clean Building Standard. Close partnership with qualifying utilities and the Department of Revenue is critical. Qualifying utilities are a consumer-owned or investor-owned gas or electric utility that serves more than 25,000 customers in the state of Washington. Utilities with less than 25,000 customers may voluntarily participate. And while Commerce is the administrator of the program, the qualifying utilities issue the incentive payment to building owners. They then receive a credit from the Department of Revenue. It is also important to note that this is a state incentive and can be administered in addition to utility conservation incentives. Next, I want to thank and introduce Jennifer Martin with the Department of Revenue for taking the time to present today. Thanks, Jennifer.
Hey, thank you, Annika. Let me go ahead and share this. All right. My name is Jennifer Martin, and my team at the Department of Revenue is responsible for implementing the Energy Efficiency Incentive Public Utility Tax Credit here at the Department of Revenue. We put a few slides together to give you an overview of how the credit works from DOR's side of things. Light and power businesses and gas distributors.
Jennifer, sorry to interrupt, but we don't see anything being presented.
Oh, let me share it again. Let me try it again. Oh, here we go. Is it there now?
Yes, ma'am, we see it.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So light and power businesses and gas distribution businesses can earn a credit for participating in the program. The definitions for light and power business and gas distribution business can be found in RCW 8216.010. A light and power business means a business of operating a plant or system for the generation, production, or distribution of electrical energy for hire or sale, and or the wheeling of electricity for others. And a gas distribution business is a business operating a plant or system for the production or distribution or hire for sale of gas, whether manufactured or natural. Credits are allowed for incentive payments made plus up to 8% of the documented administrative costs. The credit can be applied to public utility taxes due, but can't be claimed against other taxes like the business and occupation tax or the retail sales tax. We are still finalizing what this process will look like, but right now our plan is that Department of Commerce will notify Department of Revenue that the incentive payment has been approved. Once the light and power business or gas distribution business pays the incentive, then that business can report and claim a credit on the combined excise tax return for the same period. It'll be immediate. The credit can be applied to public utility taxes due on that return. Any unused credit can be used through that calendar year or any time during the following 2 calendar years. This is a preliminary view of our worksheet as we programmed it. Please ignore the errors on here. They're resolving them right now and they should be fixed in the final version. But the first line will be the total amount of incentives paid during that reporting period. Number 2 will be the documented administrative costs. The third field will auto-populate, limiting the allowable administrative costs to 8% of the incentives paid for the period. The next line will automatically calculate the allowable credit for the period. And the fifth one should also automatically populate. If this credit was established in a prior period but wasn't claimed, it'll show here. So it'll take all previous credits for this program and put them there so you can see them. 6 will be the total credit available from the current period and prior periods. Number 7 is what the business wants to use on their current return, the amount of credit they want to claim. And 8 will be whatever is the remaining credit that'll be carried forward to the next period. In order to verify the credits, DOC is going to provide DOR with the approved incentive amounts. We'll compare those incentives to the amounts claimed on the excise tax return. If we find discrepancies or irregularities, we'll just contact the business claiming the credit and get some additional information. This credit can be used immediately or carried forward to cover future public utility tax liability, but it can't be carried backward. It's not a refundable credit, so if the credit exceeds the tax due, we can't just issue a refund for it. And if credits are claimed in excess of what was earned, they have to be repaid. Interest will be assessed on those amounts, but penalties will not be assessed unless the amounts aren't paid back by the due date. If credits were incorrectly claimed based on amounts authorized by Department of Commerce, we will not be billing those back. Those do not need to be repaid. There's also no annual report required in order to claim the credit, and the department published public utility tax credit for energy efficiency incentive payments special notice to our website on December 8th, 2020. And that special notice also includes almost all of the information that was included in this presentation. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Jennifer. We have one question, and I know that was a lot of information, so I'll have everybody gather their thoughts and write in their question. But we have one coming from Bonnie. She asks if the worksheet is for utilities to fill out and not customers, building contractors. Is that correct?
Excellent question. That is exactly correct. So the utility will pay the incentives and then claim the credit by filling out the worksheet. A lot of these businesses, they're not going to be filing returns. So this credit is just for you guys. It won't be filled out by anybody else.
Great, thank you. Next one is from Ted. Can credits be claimed on a rolling basis as incentives are paid to owners?
Another excellent question, and absolutely, that's how we've set it up so that we and you can track it by incentive and report it in real time with the return. So yes, absolutely.
Great, thank you. Let's see, another one came in from Nancy. Will the utility need to prepare a 1099 for the incentive payment made to the building owner?
Actually, we don't have a lot of concern about how it's paid. The department doesn't use 1099s or W-9s. We're not an income tax state, so that's not something we typically care too much about. But a 1099 is an option if you wanted to do it that way.
Great. Monica asks, I would like further clarity on the administrative expenses allowed up to 8%. You mentioned that they need to be documented. How is documentation to be made and tracked?
Well, that is another excellent question. With the new program like this, we don't really have a list of documentation per se that we're looking for. It's kind of one of those things that evolves as we go through, but those kinds of things tend to be overhead costs and oversight costs. If you have questions about whether certain administrative costs would qualify, that's something that we would have to clear through our interpretations and technical advice division, our lawyers. So if you have some specific costs that you want to know about, if you send those to me or give me a call or email me, I can coordinate with that division and find out which one of those specifically qualify.
Or if you have any specific information or questions, you can definitely email the Clean Buildings inbox email address, and I'll put that in the chat. We can direct those to Jennifer. And I just entered the email address in the chat. No new questions thus far, just kind of give them another moment. Jennifer, thank you so much for presenting. This is a lot of really good information. I'm pretty sure the information that you presented has been on their mind. Can you just go back a slide?
Sure.
I'll have everybody read that and maybe I'll drum up some thoughts. Okay, another one from Nancy. We think we'll need to set up a system to track the incentive reservations and the payments. Are these costs considered administrative costs?
You know, they quite possibly could be, but that's one of those things that's the nitty-gritty details that we're still figuring out. So that would be something I would encourage you to write into to the department to find out whether they qualify. So if you email DOC, they can forward that to me and I can send it to our legal guys and find out exactly to what extent that could cover it. But off the top of my head, I would guess if something like that would absolutely qualify, but that's from me and we're still sorting those out. So.
Wonderful, thank you. A question from Stacy. Has anyone at the Washington Utilities and Transportation Commission been involved in the execution of this?
Not to my knowledge from the Department of Revenue side.
Okay. Rebecca asked, how will, oh, go ahead.
Oh,
Emily?
I was just going to pipe in from Commerce's perspective. We do have regular coordination with UTC when we have laws like this passed and are moving through implementation. I'm wondering, based on this comment or question, if there's a specific area of concern or an item that we should be coordinating more closely on. So a bit more context would be helpful if you're willing to add that.
Sure, can you hear me? Maybe I thought I'd just ask it.
That's
Great,
fine.
we can
Go
hear
ahead.
you. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, just curious. I feel like we're probably going to have to connect with some of our counterparts at the UTC to discuss the accounting and kind of regulatory treatment of this credit, and so just curious if they're aware, or if there's specific groups that have been involved in this, just so that before we reach out to them, have just a better understanding of their involvement and knowledge of this.
Great, thank you for that question. We do have Jennifer Snyder on the line from UTC today. Jennifer, I don't want to, put you in the hot seat, but I'm wondering if you have any thoughts you want to share with the group.
Yeah, no, that's fine, Emily. As I'm sure everyone who's involved with UTC all knows, we have been coordinating with Commerce on quite a few things lately. I have to say, probably this is one of the areas where we've had the least interaction, and certainly I don't believe anyone has really dug in directly with the Department of Revenue. So we definitely, on our energy regulation side, will have to have somebody take a look at what's going on and exactly how to deal with that.
Great, thank you, Jennifer, and thank you for flagging this topic. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Shall I move on to the next question? Okay. How will condition versus non-conditioned space be documented? Benchmarking through portfolio manager will not provide that level of detail. Do you want to take that, Luke?
I'm sorry, Adelaide.
Okay.
Can you repeat that?
Okay, sorry. It says, how will condition versus non-conditioned space be documented? Benchmarking through portfolio manager will not provide that level of detail.
So benchmarking in portfolio manager will be documenting condition space only. So additionally, if you're benchmarking the building that has space within the building that is exempt from the standard, such as a agricultural space, you would not include that space in the benchmarking, just the space that is covered by the standard. So unconditioned space is a space that is not covered by the standard. Unconditioned and semi-conditioned space, as defined by the Washington State building codes.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Luke. Next comment is from Jim White. Even though Commerce does not sound like we need to do, sounds like we need to do a 1099 federal tax form, and then additional comments. If we need to issue a 1099, we will need a W-9 for the building owners who will be receiving the check, who will collect that. This is a discussion between Jim and Nancy. Any comments from Jennifer or Annika?
I can comment. The Department of Revenue doesn't really collect those. They may be reviewed in the case of an audit, and we may ask for a copy if we're trying to verify incentives paid, but that's not something you need to send to us. It's not something we collect.
Thanks. Thanks, Jennifer. Next question. Will the remaining budget of $75 million be posted publicly? Annika?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
Will the remaining budget of the $75 million be posted publicly?
That's a really good question. I'm not sure about that. I know that we have some requirements for public posting and public disclosure. We'll look into that.
Thanks, Annika. And we have a question from Beth. Has there been any discussion about transportation or transport-only building owners who purchase their gas from a marketer rather than the utility? And whether the serving utility can pay the building owner for the early adopter incentive? Let me ask that again, unless you got
Yeah.
it, Annika?
So yeah. And Jennifer, I'm hoping that we could partner on this one. So we for a utility to issue the incentive payment, they must pay the public utility tax credits. They must be able to claim those credits. And if they cannot, then they are not eligible to participate in the incentive program.
That's correct. Yeah. I don't have anything to add. You said it very succinctly.
And one thing as Commerce, what we'll do is we'll post some FAQs on our webpage that help detail who qualifies and who doesn't qualify and the references for those.
Great. We have another question from Rick. For buildings served by both gas and electric utilities, will there be split payments? 2 checks for building owners.
Yes. So listed, and so if you go to our website, we have the RCWs that are referenced for the early adopter incentive program. And in the RCW that specifically calls out the incentive program, it does say that it's to the proportion of energy use reduction by fuel type.
Okay. I think we'll move on from here. If anyone else has further questions, feel free to enter it into the chat box. We will email them to Jennifer and we'll get back to you. Please also enter your email address. You can directly message me if you don't want to share your email address to Annalyn Bergen. You can direct message me or you can email our inbox at buildings@commerce.wa.gov. And thank you, Jennifer, for your time and your presentation. We appreciate all your work.
Oh, thank you.
Great. So I want to thank you all who are participating and for all of the great discussion. We really appreciate that. And also thank you to Jennifer for being a part of this webinar today. We love collaborating with you and sharing information. So next, we're going to discuss the Early Adopter Incentive Guidebook. We want to thank you for submitting comments. Your input is really valuable to us. We have a lot to figure out and really this is a group effort for all of us. So we realize there's still some remaining questions we are working to resolve. There are some elements specified in statute that we as Commerce do not have authority to modify. And some questions that we are working with our Attorney General to provide some more clarity, and we'll post program guides to our webpage soon. Commerce is also working with stakeholders to explore issues of equity and access for the limited pool of incentive money that we have available. So our next meeting will be April 28th to discuss equity and inclusion. And we have also updated some of the guidebook language and we'll post the latest version to our website. What we have updated is giving a 6 to 12 month extension based on the project scope of work. We will be maintaining the 18 months because this takes into account the limitation of the incentive funds and incentive application deadlines by building size. If a building can't meet their EUI within the 18 months or by the extension request date, this will allow for the waitlisted buildings to participate in the early adopter incentive program. And also the goal is to make sure that projects are moving through the system and that we're not tying up funds. Do we have any questions at this point for some of the modifications or? And if you have any questions later, you can always email our central inbox as well. I think we have a question.
We have a question going back to DOR. Jennifer, are you still on the line?
I am still here.
Great. Do you want to answer one more questions before
Absolutely,
Okay,
absolutely.
great. Do you mind, Annika?
No, not at all.
Okay. Is there any way that the 8% administrative fee could just be a default? This payment processing is going to take a lot of utility administration, requiring us to document. Our indirect costs can be difficult and add more difficulty.
That's a really good question. And to get, like I said, a final answer on what the department would consider documented is something we would probably have to send through our legal guys. But the verbiage in the law specifically says it has to be documented costs. And while we haven't really sussed out what's documented, an estimate would probably be okay on the return. But in the case of an audit, that may not be sufficient. So it will be a default 8% on the worksheet, but if that's more than your actual documented total costs, then it could be billed back. But if we wanted to find out exactly, what qualifies in there, again, we can send that through our legal guys and find out exactly how much is okay to estimate and when that needs to be trued up.
Thanks, Jennifer. Everyone has such great questions this morning. All right. Well, follow-up question from Ted. If let's see, follow-up question. If the building is served by only one participating utility, but archives reduction in multiple fuels, electric, gas, or steam, does the single participating utility pay the entire 85 cents per square feet incentive and claim the entire tax credit? A potential situation for Seattle City Light customers that also use district steam from Enwave, possibly customers that use PSE transport natural gas.
This is a really great question. And part of the question, we are working with our Attorney General to understand. But as the law reads, that it is the incentive is paid by the proportion of energy use reduction by fuel type. So it would the incentive would be paid based on fuel reduced and by a utility that is participating in the incentive program and able to take that tax credit.
Okay. Next question is qualifying the early adopter incentive payment strictly a job for commerce, or is there utility involvement in qualification?
Is this who qualifies the utility or who approves the application?
Feel free to unmute yourself if you want to clarify or type it in. Approves the application.
Got it. Okay. So Commerce will be receiving the application. We will make sure that they have all of the appropriate forms available. Once we review the application, it's the utility who improves the incentive amount. So Commerce will review the application and calculate the incentive, and then work with the utility to make sure that they have the tax credits available to pay the incentive that's been calculated. So it's a two-part. It's a two-part with Commerce and utilities, and then also with revenue. So we're all working together to make sure that the credits are available.
Great, thank you, Annika. Shall we move on? And we'll
Sure.
address the questions a little later.
Perfect, thank you. So next we'll be discussing outreach and support resources. So this image here on your right is what our current webpage looks like. Here on our webpage, we have workshop recordings, we have rules and incentive guidelines, we have Energy Star Portfolio Manager training links, we have resources for building owners, upcoming webinars, and in our Clean Building Standard and Early Adopter Incentive presentations. We have also, by email request, the Clean Buildings team has and is collaborating with various stakeholders to provide presentations and discuss the Clean Buildings program. We are also available to continue providing presentations. Please make your requests to our central inbox at thebuildings@commerce.wa.gov. And next, we're gonna, our webpage is currently under redesign, and Annalyn Bergen will be presenting on what's coming soon.
Thanks, Sonika. Thank you so much. Hello again, everyone. We're excited to announce that big things are coming. Building owner notification, Clean Buildings portal with built-in applications, redesigned webpage, some informational and training videos, a customer support hotline, and an overall customer support program. So as I go over some of the details we're working on, if you feel that there are gaps or have any suggestions, please send it over to our Clean Buildings inbox and write it into our chat box. We absolutely value your suggestions. Next slide. Building owner notification. Commerce will be sending out a letter notification through the mail to building owners no later than July 2021. Notifications will contain very important information, including parcel details, it'll assign building IDs, general instructions for creating a SAW account and logging into the Clean Buildings portal, as well as additional information on the Early Adopter Incentive Program in mandatory compliance. Next, please. The Clean Buildings portal. So we are hard at work developing this Clean Buildings portal. We're being very thoughtful of the user experience. The portal will contain a database of all the buildings we've identified of 50,000 square feet and over. Each building owner will have a unique building login, which will give them access to their building's profile and information. The portal will have most of the required standard forms and, for compliance. We're trying to make it easier for you and less use of paper documents. And we're hoping in the future phases to connect to the building owner's Energy Star Portfolio Manager account. The portal allows the building owners to apply for the incentive program, check status of an application, apply for an exemption. Building owners will also be able to view their information and check for errors and requests for correction. Next slide. So the new Clean Buildings webpage is under construction. To the left is a little bit of a snapshot. It may or may not look like that, but something to look forward to. When it's complete, it'll be organized and focused on customer support and resources. The webpage will help building owners understand the Clean Buildings standard, determine if the law would apply to their building, give guidance on what they can do now and when their compliance dates will be. It'll also have quick links to the Clean Buildings portal, some archived rulemaking documents and workshops, and legislation and reference standards. Next, please. The webpage will be divided into different sections, and this section will, there's a section dedicated to assisting owners on how to comply. It'll contain flowcharts, explain the different paths to compliance, and break down each section of ASHRAE Standard 100 and our amendments under the WAC 194-50. There will also be a section for the Early Adopter Incentive Program and another one on specifically support and resources. That section will identify the different roles and responsibilities involved in compliance and resources for benchmarking, financing, relevant codes and standards, building efficiency tools, and training videos. Next, please. So we're currently trying to produce a series of videos that will be informational and a little bit of training. Topics that we have in mind are pretty much a Clean Buildings overview for those who haven't been following, are the evolution of this. Annex Z, which covers the administrative requirements and compliance path, developing an EOIT, what can building owners do now, an overview of the incentive program energy audits, an introduction to Annex X, which covers the investment criteria, building an energy management plan, next step for after you receive a notification, and navigating through our Clean Buildings portal. They won't be released all at once. We plan to release them a section at a time. You may start to see videos as soon as next month. If you have any suggestions on a video topic you'd like to see, feel free to enter them into the chat box or email us. And that is all I have. Next, and Annika, take it away.
Great, thanks, Annalyn. We have posted a resource catalog under the Incentive Guidelines and Development section on our webpage. There are some support requests we've received through the rulemaking process and the rulemaking and incentive input process. I'm going to click on our resource catalog here. The resource catalog identifies the resources we have available and those that are currently under development. And I'm going to pass it over to Emily so she can give some more context on this.
Great, thanks, Annika. Can everybody hear me okay?
I can hear you.
All righty. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here today. I just was going to provide some real brief context about the customer support program to support clean buildings here in the state of Washington. As Annika mentioned, we've been working through a process of getting input from you all along the way through our rulemaking and just active engagement. We've also been able to glean quite a bit of information from a great survey that the WSU Energy Program distributed a couple months back. So we've been using this input to help shape the draft plan that you see and that we're going to ask you to help us, fill that out, identify any areas that may be missing. Just real briefly, I wanted to talk about the intent and vision for what we want to accomplish. So our vision for the customer support program is to deliver exceptional and timely assistance and tools to building owners participating and ultimately complying with the Clean Buildings program. Couple quick reminders, though, that I want to just ground the conversation with. As we've been thinking about developing the customer support program, we've really been thinking about what are we required to do, like we've been calling those the must-dos, and what do we want to include in the plan because it's a high priority and feels necessary for us to implement the program successfully. So from our perspective, what we see fitting into the must-do category around customer support and outreach is, we're required by law to complete building owner notification by July 1st of 2021. And this is going to be a really important activity for us to get the word out to all eligible building owners. And there's likely going to be some really important communications leading up to sending out those notifications and following those notifications. We're also required by law to have a customer support program. However, the law doesn't detail specifically what the minimum elements need to be, and we really need your help developing how this needs to shape up and how it may change over time. We're also required to have a database for tracking building owner compliance and really will be the main portal for interacting with building owners as we move forward with the incentive program and mandatory compliance. And we also need to have documents and forms to align with Standard 100, which allows Commerce to verify compliance. And so this, again, kind of fits into that category of must-dos. The other areas and elements we're thinking a lot about and developing are the items that Annalyn and Annika have just been reviewing. We feel like it's of utmost importance to have a website that is easy to navigate and has actionable information that's not overwhelming. We're really looking for input on that when we launch the website. Let us know what's working, let us know what's not working, and let us know what's missing. We also have quite a bit of outreach work we want to be focusing on, and very important to this is leveraging the existing relationships that already are in place in our state and in our region to build awareness about the standards. So we've been working closely with utilities, with NIA, with BPA, Smart Building Center, WSU Energy Program, a number of different associations that we have around the state, such as BOMA and NIOP, and we're looking to continue those partnerships and think about how we can use those groups to help get the word out about the requirements of the program. A lot of activity we need to do and develop around education. Annalyn spoke a bit about the trainings that we're posting to the website. We've been delivering a number of presentations, workshops, and then working on those recorded videos. Just a quick note, if anybody has interest in delivering a presentation on the Clean Buildings program to your, your networks, your associations, or your groups, feel free to send us an email, and we're happy to schedule that and make time. And also just real quickly to talk about technical assistance. So technical assistance is going to be key to the success of us all. We feel that it's of utmost importance to provide technical assistance to building owners to be successful in participating with the incentive program and also with the law when it becomes a mandatory compliance period. We're working quickly to set up a phone hotline. We already have our email address set up, and there is going to be a role for Commerce to provide that direct technical assistance as we develop interpretations and clarity around the standard. And then we also will be partnering with outside entities to provide some of this technical assistance as well. An example of that would be EPA. They provide great technical assistance on Portfolio Manager. So we're trying to, again, leverage the existing resources in place and look to layer on additional assistance that is going to be critical to our success. So with that, Annika, I'm wondering, what would you add? And do you want to walk us through the Word document that you've got pulled up there?
Sure. Thank you so much, Emily. That was really helpful having some background. So this document here is posted to our webpage under the Incentive Guidelines and Development section. It summarizes the slides that you see today on the current outreach and resources available on our webpage and what's coming soon. So we have the coming soon section. We have the new webpage. We have videos that we have planned forward. Our customer support hotline that's coming soon, and the customer support program, and the additional resources we have under development. So these bullets here under the rulemaking comments submitted for support requests, these are elements that we are working on to develop some resources. We want to just recognize we hear you, and we are grateful for the comments that you submit to us, and we're working to provide documents and items on our webpage that are helpful. I also want to point to, we have a Smartsheet request form that we've created. It's the Clean Buildings Program Outreach and Request Form. It's linked here into this document. I'm going to click on it here, and it will take me over to the Smartsheet request form. So here, it's embedded in the document, and this form includes identifying your intended audience for the outreach or education request. Here we have utilities, building owners, professionals, additional training on energy efficiency measures, financing, or other. If you do select the other, it does open another section where you can describe your audience. You can also identify your outreach topic or your education topic there, and your preferred platform, so video, web page, training, diagram, flowchart, or other. And then you would also include your contact name, email, and phone number. The information here is captured into a spreadsheet we monitor, and we will communicate with you. And then with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Emily.
All right, thank you, Annika. I am wondering if you can flip back to the Word document catalog, and we can have just a bit of discussion. Thank you, Annika. All right, so for much of the remainder of our time here in the webinar, we just would like to have some discussion, field questions, and get input from you all about the customer support plan and what we ought to be considering. I'm going to pop a couple questions to seed the conversation into the chat box. Folks that want to stick around for the discussion, we invite you, unmute yourself or use the chat box, and let's explore this topic further. For folks that may not wish to stick around for the discussion, we'll post this information on our website with a request for input, and we welcome you to use the Smartsheet tool that Annika just showed us, and then also just emailing our building's email address will work as well. So if you give me just a second, I'll put some questions into the chat. Few key questions we want to explore with you all is, what specifically do you expect the Clean Buildings team to create or provide as part of its customer support? So what specifically do you expect that you're not seeing on this list? Help us identify those items. What are the highest priority items or activities that we need to provide? So what's the highest priority from your perspective? And any major obstacles or challenges to our collective success that we should be aware of and thinking about and planning for. So again, I'll put those questions into the chat, and we just invite you to share input as you're building.
While people are thinking about their answer, I just want to get through just a couple of questions in the chat box. If that's okay.
You bet, Annalyn, thank you.
So, Annika, how do we access the Smartsheet form?
You access a Smartsheet form through the resource catalog. So the resource catalog is a document linked under the incentive guidelines and development section on our webpage, on our Clean Buildings webpage. So I'm going to click back to this and I'll go back to that Word document. But this is a screenshot of our website. So if you see here under the incentive guidelines and development, it's the link that says resource catalog in orange. I think it's the third bullet down. If you click on that, it will take you to this document here. And the section that's underlined where it says Clean Buildings Program Outreach and Request Form, if you select that, it will take you to the Smartsheet. And what it will also do is we'll link the Smartsheet form directly on our website also. So it'll be available in two places. We'll have it directly linked on our webpage and also on this resource form, resource document.
Thanks, Annika. Let's see. Joel, I see your question with the different scenarios, and we'll get to that. But just jumping to can you share the links for Form B and Form C? All of our forms are currently under development. We're thinking, we're trying our best to incorporate them into the Clean Buildings portal. But
I can respond to that as
go ahead,
well.
Luke.
So Form C is Energy Star Portfolio Manager. That's the development of the EUI for the building. So we will have a specific Form C to document that EUI developed by Portfolio Manager in the portal once mandatory compliance is in place, and we'll have it before then as well. But in the meantime, if you benchmark your building, you essentially get the information needed for Form C. It's documenting the EUI. Form B is developing and documenting the target EUI for that same building. So those requirements are outlined in WAC 19450, or the state amendments to ASHRAE 100. So that's a fairly basic calculation. If it's an area, if it's a mixed property type building where you have several different EUIs, that EUI target is based upon the weighting of area for each different property type. We have a draft calculator, and that we've been using internally for the EUI target calculation. If you're interested in using that in the meantime, just for your own use and for your own information, please contact us and we can see about getting that out to you.
Since we're on the topic of the Clean Buildings portal, Chris asked, who would have access to the Clean Buildings portal? Just building owners, utilities, energy matters, NGOs. I'm not sure why NGOs would. Maybe if they're building owners, I guess, etc. Do you want to add to that, Luke?
Well, so, Clean Buildings portal is under development, but the intent is specifically for the building owner or their designated representative to have access to the portal. This is where they'll be documenting all appropriate compliance.
And then also for the incentive program, the utilities will have some reports that we will be generating along with revenue. So they'll have some ability to receive who's applying.
Our portal is under development, and the intention is for the building owners and the personnel needed for compliance. Anyone outside of that, we're still trying to discuss that with the AAG, and we'll have, please submit your questions and we'll present them to our AAG so we could have the appropriate answer for it. Let's see, let's move on to, what is this? What specifically do you expect Clean Buildings team to create or provide as part of customer support? A user guide specific to different building types, for example, healthcare, that answers specific compliance questions that might not be completely clear in the rules. This user guide can be developed in collaboration with stakeholders. Thank you. Thanks for your suggestion.
Annalyn, I can respond to that real quick. Thank you, Jeff, for the suggestion. That's a great one. Just a quick note for the group, there is a user's guide for ASHRAE Standard 100 that's been under development with an organization out of BC and working in close partnership with British Columbia folks. We are waiting for that user's guide to be finalized so we can identify the additional materials we would need to use to supplement that user's guide to reflect the Washington State amendments to Standard 100. So I think that's what you can expect. And we would love some input as well as we work through that existing material and think through what we need to develop to have it be responsive to Washington State needs.
Thanks, Emily. While we wait for additional comments and questions, let's go back to Joel's different scenarios. Luke, I'm going to need your help for this.
Sure.
Okay. I'm going to read it aloud, but you may want to, it's a lot, so you may want to look into the chat box and kind of read it for yourself if you'd like. Alternative one, if a school is comprised of 3 separate buildings, each with 20,000 square feet of conditioned space, all served by a common HVAC physical plant and a single meter, does this school qualify for the 50,000 square feet requirement?
Let me take these one by one, Len.
Okay.
So this school, would be a campus of multiple buildings. So the Clean Building Standard applies to single buildings over 50,000 square feet. So in this scenario, these buildings would not qualify or wouldn't be part of the clean building standard if none of the buildings individually is over 50,000 square feet of conditioned space.
Great, thank you, Luke. Let's move on to the second scenario, alternative 2. What if one of the buildings has a standalone metering? Does this school meet the 50,000 square foot requirement?
Well, again, as the answer to the first question, the building itself needs to be over 50,000 square feet. You may have instances where there's a campus and the campus is served by a master meter and does not have individual or sub-metering for each of the individual buildings. If a building is over 50,000 square feet and does not have its own metering, independent metering, it cannot create an EUI. So it would need to be comply with the standard through an energy audit and implementing all cost-effective energy efficiency measures as per Annex X criteria.
Thanks, Luke. Moving on to the third scenario, alternative 3. What if one of the building's HVAC system operates independently? For example, all electric with the other two served by gas or electric. Does the school meet the 50,000 square feet requirement?
Yeah, you know, it doesn't matter what type of fuels the building uses in order to develop an EUI. So they can have various different types of HVAC systems that operate independently, or that, you know, a district heating and cooling system. The qualifications for the clean building standard, again, is the 50,000 square foot threshold. If a building cannot be metered independently, it will need to comply via the investment criteria, so the energy audit and implementation of all cost-effective energy efficiency measures. All fuels used by that building must be identified and documented in the development of that EUI. I hope that answered the question.
Thanks, Luke. Let's move on to, All right, Christine, she answers the question, what specifically do you expect the buildings team to provide? A timeline graphic that outlines the time needed for audit, EAM installation, verification, etc. Many building owners don't have an idea when they will need to start the process. That is a great suggestion, Christine. Thank you so much. Luke, do you want to add to that?
No, I think that's a great idea, and I agree. It's difficult to understand how much time they are allotted, or even when planning, when they should get started. And so one of those things could be suggestions for what can we do now, as you've mentioned earlier in the presentation, Ellen.
Awesome, thank you. Next one is a question. With COVID changing the way buildings operate in 2020 and into 2021, is there a thought to use 2019 as the base year for the early adopter incentive, since applications can be submitted by July 1st of 2021?
So currently the requirement is that you use energy data and development of the EUI within the previous 2 years. So depending on when the applications are received, 2019 could be within that. We hear your question and we don't have a solid answer to that yet, but it is likely that we would want to see a representative, a more representative year.
Luke, just to add to that real quick, thanks for bringing the suggestion forward. This makes a lot of sense for us to consider, especially as we move forward with the pandemic. So just want to let you know how much we appreciate you bringing this up, and we'll take it into close consideration and see what we can do to move forward.
Thanks, Emily. Just moving on. Another great suggestion for Christine. Another resource that Commerce could provide is a list of audit companies. Perhaps NIA could assist with participating auditor lists. These auditors will need to go through a training webinar to understand the requirements of the program.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you, Christine.
Okay, why don't we go back to the questions Emily asked again? So what specifically do you expect the Clean Buildings team to create or provide as part of customer support? What are the highest priority items and activities to provide? And what are the major obstacles or challenges to our collective success that we should be aware of? We're going to hang on just for a little bit, and if we receive no response, I'm going to send it over to you, Annika.
Annalyn, thank you so much. Annika, I'm wondering if we want to finish up the presentation, and I just want to highlight to everybody this is part of an ongoing dialogue and discussion that we started over a year ago now with you all when we began stakeholder engagement back in a time when we were still meeting in person. So I think that's one of the biggest frustrations with the remote webinar is not being able to be in the same room together. We really invite you all to share your thoughts with us, send us an email, schedule time for a phone call. We would love to hear more about your particular needs and the needs of the folks that you work with. So open invitation to continue that dialogue moving forward. And this is going to be a work in progress. We're going to launch the incentive program as we work through the the early projects. We're going to realize there's additional materials and support we need to have available. So we look forward to that ongoing partnership as we work together.
Great. Thanks, Emily. So this resource catalog is under the Incentive and Guidelines Development under webinar number 2. We will also include an individual link to the Smartsheet request form there. So I'm going to hand it
you
back
want me
to
to take this slide?
Sure, is that okay? Thank you.
All right, you bet. Okay, next steps coming out of this discussion. Again, we welcome your input on your ideas regarding outreach and customer support resources using our email inbox or the Smartsheet request form. These materials Annika, are they already posted to the website, or do we need to post them following this webinar?
They're posted to the website.
Okay, already there. Of course they are. Thank you for that. Next steps as well, as I mentioned, is ongoing engagement and outreach. We have been doing quite a bit of work in presenting to different groups, doing trainings, and just really having some discussions to explore areas of concerns and shared interest. And we are going to continue that work in the coming months. If you have interest in scheduling a discussion with us, we welcome and invite that. Please reach out to the building's email address and we can get time scheduled and on the books. As Annika mentioned, we did decide to postpone our next webinar to April 28th, and this is when we'll discuss the Early Adopter Incentive Program and considerations about equity and inclusion. We felt like delaying this webinar just a little bit was going to help ease kind of the workload issues and challenges working through legislative session. I know many of us have more work on our plate starting just a couple days ago than we did before. So we wanted to be responsive to that. And we also wanted to spend some time doing, just engagement and having time to listen to you all as building owners, as community-based organizations, as utilities. What do we need to be considering and what can we do to ensure the incentive program is broadly available to all building owners in the state of Washington. Don't forget to visit our Clean Buildings webpage and sign up for program updates. And with that, I just want to let you know how much I appreciate all of your participation on behalf of the Clean Buildings team. We appreciate everybody's participation. Revenue, thank you so much for being here today. Jennifer, we really appreciate that. It was great content and we look forward to continued partnership. Jennifer from UTC, thanks for piping in. It's great to have you here and thank you all. Annalyn, it looks like we have a couple more questions or comments. Let's go ahead and move through those and then we can end the webinar.
Thank you, Emily. All right. Question from Grant. For the adjustment target EUI based on building operating hours, will building owners be able to count the time period associated with building start up, optimum start? Luke?
Sorry about that. I was muted. Yeah. It's when I'm trying to reference documents and not looking at the Zoom. It's hard to tell when I'm not muted. So yeah, that's a good question. If you look at table 7-3, it's the building operator shifts normalization factor. The footnotes will provide guidance on what time is considered normal or operating shifts. So within that, I've posted at the bottom of this chat here the list of the footnotes, and you can go through those individually to get your specific questions answered. But you can see note 1 says, do not count the hours when the property is occupied only by maintenance, security, and cleaning crew or other support personnel. So those footnotes should give you guidance on whether you can count those hours. My assumption for most cases is that you would not.
Thanks, Luke. Let's moving on to the next question. Emily, this might be for you. Will the lists of buildings required to comply be made public or available to utilities?
Yeah, thanks, Annalyn, for that question. Unfortunately, Anna Beatty, our data lead, is not here today due to a power outage. So I'll do my best to field this question. And again, we welcome your input. So it is not our intention at this point in time to provide a list of buildings required to comply with the law, to provide that publicly. We have a number of, data privacy issues that we need to consider and work through. The question about whether or not it will be made available to the utilities, and actually before I jump to the utilities, I do want to mention, I think that there's a role for us to provide aggregated data that's not specific to the building level at this point in time. So again, we're trying to balance that transparency with data security and privacy issues and working closely with our legal counsel on that. Lists available to utilities. Annika, do you know the answer to that, or do you want me to see what I can do to cover it?
I think we can work on this together. So we are working together to generate this list. That's something that we don't have pre-populated. We have a a form available on our through our bulletin. It's actually a smart sheet form for utilities to identify their roles and in their participation in the Early Adopter Incentive Program. But we also recognize that we need to do some outreach specifically to utilities to identify those that are participating and those that are voluntarily participating.
I think they were asking if the list of buildings will be made available to utilities.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. I
No,
would've-
and I think Emily answered that question. I think this is something that we're having to figure out legally, and this is something Anna Beatty is working on with our AG.
When we have more information, Lainey, we will certainly have that posted on our website on an FAQ document, because it's been a common question. Thank you for the question. Beth writes, obstacles. I think there are some great areas, meeting scenarios that hopefully can be continued discussion to do what makes the most sense for building owners and greenhouse gas reductions. Luke, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the discussion is always useful. If I'm understanding the question clearly, yeah, there will be buildings that aren't metered independently, and their only path for compliance would be through the investment criteria. So not based on meeting an EUIT, they would just need to implement all cost-effective measures identified by the investment grade energy audit and the associated investment criteria of Annex X.
Luke, I'll just add to that a little bit. Thank you so much. And Beth, thanks for the, calling this issue out. There certainly are gray area issues. We're already hearing about a number of those via phone calls and emails. And, our goal and aim will be to provide clear and specific guidance for the variation of scenarios that we're that we're aware of. Inevitably, we're going to continue to have tricky situations come up, and the Commerce team will partner closely with you to better understand the conditions of the buildings in question there. One of the ideas that we are kicking around is a role of a technical advisory group that we could work through and with as we launch the incentive program to help provide some of this guidance for some of these gray area issues. So expect some more discussion about that. If that seems like a helpful approach for us to work closely with stakeholders in a technical advisory group capacity, we'd welcome that opportunity to do that.
Okay, we have no other questions or comments in the chat. Annika, should we close out early?
Sure. Thank you so much for those that have participated. We just continue to welcome your input. Please check out our webpage. Please email our central inbox, buildings@commerce.wa.gov. And with that, this concludes our webinar.
Thank you, everybody.